What is going on, everybody? It's me, your host, Nicholas Willard, and you're listening to Almost Canon. So, if you have had a strange or unusual event happen to you and you believe it could very well be paranormal, then we want to hear your story. Whether it has to do with aliens, alien abductions, UFOs, Bigfoot. I made a post the other day, whether you saw the big man while you were out, I don't know, camping, hunting, fishing, hiking, doesn't matter. And even if you were sitting on your porch drinking coffee and he walked right by you, we want to hear your story. And I'll also add lake monsters. I mean, you can't go wrong with a good lake monster story. I'm telling you right now, I love them. Everybody loves them. Even if you say you don't, everybody loves a good lake monster story. So if you have had an encounter with the paranormal or the unknown, please hit us up via our Facebook page at Almost Canon Podcast. You can use our email at almostcanonpod@gmail.com. You can try to hit us up through our Instagram at Almost Canon Podcast. Also, don't forget to rate and review the show. You know, this is something I always forget to mention. I'm not going to forget to mention it tonight. Pause what you're doing. Scroll to the bottom of your Apple Podcast app, or I don't know, whatever you're listening to it on, whether it's Amazon Music or Stitcher. Actually, I don't think Stitcher's a thing anymore. But whatever you're listening to it on, just pause it, scroll to the bottom, leave a 5-star review. We'll really appreciate it. You know, it's these reviews that make the show easier to find for others, and it helps us immensely. I can't explain how much it helps us. You know, we are a small private podcast. It's just us, me and my wife, working on the show, and we will really appreciate it if you could help us grow. Okay, now that all that's out of the way, let's jump into tonight's episode. The meat and potatoes of tonight's episode. Or should I say, the corned beef and cabbage of tonight's episode. I don't know. So what do we got tonight? We got 3 tales. 3 stories from 3 individuals who encountered the unknown at some point in their life. I've got 2 Sasquatch stories and 1 alien abduction. These are great stories. I really hope you enjoy them. I know for the first one, I was able to get her on. She's going to go over her story. You know, we're going to talk about it for a little while. The second story was sent in to me, and I'm going to read that one. And the last story, I was able to go and interview a man who had an incredible encounter with a Sasquatch. I have never heard anything like this before. You know, maybe I might have read 1 or 2 stories similar. However, what happened to this man was incredible. These are stories they have not shared with anyone else, you know, out of fear of ridicule, being laughed at or called a liar. And this is big with pretty much anybody who has had an encounter with the unknown, which is why I'm incredibly grateful to have them on the show, have them share their story with me, share their story with you. And let's jump right into our first story. Yeah, I don't know if you want to start by kind of like giving explaining the area a little bit, because
Okay.
the way I understood it originally, it was you were kind of like right by it's almost right in town, the town of Springfield.
Right in the town of Springfield. Yeah. Yeah, right up I lived in an apartment on Main Street pretty much, and we had to walk a friend home. She lived on Summer Street, so that we would walk down the road and go towards like the movie theater and take the left up the hill. And she kept going right there where it forks to go to like Com2 Park or stay on Summer Street.
Mm-hmm.
She kept walking, and the three of us, the three remaining people, were like, oh, we'll walk up here first before we head back to my house. And so we walked up and we took the little right-hand turn into the graveyard. And we were in there, talking typical teenage conversations about how we hated Springfield and we wished our friend didn't have a curfew and, all of those stupid things. My two friends were seated on, I can see it, the gravestone perfectly in my head. But they were seated on a tall, flat gravestone that, and they were facing me and I was facing the park. So, I was turned around facing the road and the park across the street with that little brick house that's there.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of in between the two of them standing on the ground. And I'm rather short and they're, bigger. So they're up there. So I'm looking up at the two of them talking. And all of a sudden, it kind of felt like everything just slowed down and shifted. Like my friends weren't really paying attention and like something was just off. And I looked at the both of them and their eyes freaked me out. Like they both looked terrified, but like they couldn't scream or they weren't, but they wanted to. Like you could see it on them. And I vividly remember down my girlfriend's face, because it was one male, one female. She was on the left for me and he was on the right. Two tears streaming down her face. Like I can, like that's happening right in front of me when I think about it. Like it's that vivid. Like I remember those tears running down her face and the color that was coming over their face. It was like as if somebody was shining a light from behind me. And I was too scared to turn around and look. And because I could just see something was off. And then it's like the light came over top of me. Now this is like a pink, orange, the brightest bright light I can't even describe. I've never seen anything quite like that. And it came over top of me and it closed like a dome. And when I say that, I mean like I don't know if when you were a kid, if you were in gym class, did they ever use parachutes?
Oh yeah.
And you'd, do the swish them and then sit under them, how it had like that dome effect. Well, that's exactly what this was. But I could see that end shut in front of me in onto the ground, like almost to the road. It was just ahead of us where it closed, and it felt like something just closed around us. And then I have zero memory at all whatsoever, nothing. Until I don't know when, how much later. I remember coming to, and I had my arms around both of my friends. We were in like a three-way huddle, where like their arms were wrapped around me and we all had our heads down and we were spinning and we were in the air. Our feet were off the ground. We were spinning. And all of a sudden that was over. We were on the ground. No, actually before, I'll go back a second. While we were spinning, it's like it took forever. But like I said, it literally felt like everything was slowed down at this point. But as I was going around in the spin, I kept focusing on that brick house that's at the Com2 Park. And it had a candle in the window and the light was on. And I kept, every time I go by, I wanted to scream, but I could not scream. There was I couldn't do anything. But I remember thinking to myself, why can't they see this? Why aren't they helping us? Please look out your window. Please look out your window. And it was like every time I went around, I'd see that same window. And eventually that stopped. Obviously, it didn't last like forever, but we landed on the ground. And as soon as we got to the ground, that light was off of us. It was like somebody turned off a light switch. And now it was so fast. But there was like a ball of light right above us, and it shot off into like the corner of the graveyard, but way up in the sky. I'm talking like literally it looked like a comet. It had a tail. It was going so fast, it had a tail, but you could tell it was like a tracer, but it left through the corner of the graveyard. Like if you were to look at it from the Com2 Park, that right-hand line that goes right down the trees, and then how it has the back wall of trees right there in that right corner. It went straight out and up and gone. It was just like instantly gone. My male friend peed his pants. And we were all extremely disheveled. We had no idea what was happening. We went racing down the hill. We saw some guy walking down the street. We asked him if he saw lights, and he gave us some weird response, and we just ran home from there. And we didn't leave my apartment other than to go get my one girlfriend's dog. We went and got her dog to stay in the apartment, and we stayed there for like 3 days. It was the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. And it sounds unbelievable. And if it wasn't me saying it, I wouldn't believe the story. But it happened. And I cannot to this day, like, this isn't a story I tell. I don't tell people this story. This isn't something I talk about. And not even just for the fact that, like, I know nobody would believe it, but it's scary. And I feel I'm scared now talking about it. It's like I'm inviting something back, and it's terrifying. And to the point where I know the three of us didn't even really discuss it at that point. We were too afraid. We were like, I don't know what the hell happened. And we told our other friends that were at my house, and we were like, this is what happened. And we were like, we don't know what that was, and we don't want to know what that was. Years later, I want to say probably 10 years ago, the female friend of mine and I were talking, and I was like, what do you think happened that day? And she said, we definitely got abducted. And we wrote our other friend and said, what do you think? And he said, I don't ever talk about that day. He won't even discuss it with us at this point. Like, it's bizarre, but you literally, it felt like there was nothing I could, it very vulnerable, made you feel very much like you were cattle, like I was the animal. It had complete control over me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. And it definitely contradicted everything I had ever believed about the world before that.
Right.
Because I felt very much like in control of myself before that. And after that, I never did. Like, I always felt like, okay, no matter. It doesn't matter. Like, if something like that could happen there in the middle of Springfield, it could happen anywhere.
Right.
It's a very scary thought. And I don't know what happened, like I said, but I know that the fear that I felt before and after, like, that terror, like, my body told me that I had a reason to be afraid. And I don't know. I mean, they didn't kill me. So whatever it was didn't end my life, I guess. I came back in one piece. Grateful for that, I guess, because God only knows. Clearly, whatever it was could have done whatever it wanted. And that's scary.
Now, have you ever noticed anything weird throughout your life? Anything weird ever happened? No.
Nothing like this. No, that's
No.
the only one. That is the only weird thing that's ever happened like this to me.
Right. Okay.
Like, nothing strange has ever come up since then.
What about owls? Do you see a lot of owls? This is a strange question. Do you see a lot of owls, or, it's just something I'm wondering.
I do not.
Probably haven't, but
Personally, I don't see a lot of owls. No, I actually try to see more owls than I do get to see.
okay, because there's this whole thought that abductees, they call them, what do they call them? I think they call them screen images. And people who are abducted, the abductors, they kind of disguise themselves as owls, and it's just something that I read about online.
Yeah, that's not my personal experience, but like I said, I've thought many times about going to be hypnotized just because I'm curious. Because of now, back then, this is like 97. I never heard anything about like UFOs. I honestly, at that point, was convinced, like, I didn't know. I didn't even think that it was UFOs. I didn't have that thought in my head because I didn't really hear about it. I didn't know anything about I just knew something crazy happened. But as I got older, and obviously see things, hear things, read things, yada yada yada, you begin to say, oh, that's what that was. Okay. And understanding more of it or whatnot. I have thought many times about having myself hypnotized so that I could know what happened between those two, that lapse in time. But it's so, I'm so hesitant to do it because I don't think I want to know.
Right.
Like that's, I mean, I don't know if they could tell me or show me if I could remember it. That could be very
Yeah.
scary,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
mean,
Like I don't know what the heck, I don't know. I doubt with the fear that I had and the way that I felt and the way that I wanted to escape and like couldn't move. I felt frozen. And not frozen with fear, like, because there is a difference, like you can be stunned and then stand there frozen and then run, out of fear. There
yep.
was no running. There was no, it's like that light controlled me. There was no moving for me or for my friends. Hence why when they were on those stones, they were just staring forward, crying without words or sounds.
Right.
And the thing was silent too. When it went up, it was absolutely silent. There was not a single noise to it.
And it was just a
Like it was silent. It was just, well, that's all that I remember of it. I remember the light from behind me. I remember the dome closing, and I remember it as it was in the sky and taking off. So to me, all I remember is the light. I don't know if there was any kind of form with that light.
right.
I have no idea.
Do
I
you
can't attest to that because I didn't see behind me.
do you remember how much time had passed in between those two memories? Is that something
Um,
you kept track of?
I know that I cannot remember exactly what time this happened. It had to have been somewhere around like 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning. But I remember back then we worked it out and said that it had been like an hour's time
Uh,
because our friend's curfew was at a certain time. And when we ran down the hill, I remember we knew what time it was because the bells were going off in that church that's right there.
yeah.
But I
Okay.
don't remember how many. I don't remember what time it was exactly, but I remember exactly us saying, holy shit, it's been an hour.
I don't know if you ever thought of this. I actually, because you told me this story last week or a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and I didn't think of it until just now. The Hartness house isn't far from this location, and
Mhm.
uh Mr.
Yeah,
Hartness.
that's actually something. There are tunnels from the Hartness house now there because that's something we were actually discussing that night too, because we saw there's a tunnel on the side of that graveyard that we had seen while we were up there. We're like, oh, I wonder if that goes to the Hartness house because it was this huge like tunnel, but it's probably, I mean, I don't know what it is,
Right.
but
Yeah, I've been in those tunnels down there, and there supposedly are other tunnels leading into the town. Um, but he was he was really into astrology, and he was an amateur. The word is escaping me, but he was super into telescopes and space, and he had a telescope in his
Mhm.
backyard, and he also co-founded Stellafane. So he was messing.
Right.
And this was 100 years ago, early 1900s. He was messing around with a lot of weird space stuff, and it's interesting that this super weird event, it's almost like the only thing it could be has something to do with aliens, happened not far away from a man who, like, this guy was doing some weird stuff in his basement. Like, he
Yeah.
had secret tunnels
Yeah.
under his house that only him and the members of his club were allowed into at the time, and had something to do with space.
Yeah. So I know that I know just from, I've cleaned a couple rooms at that place, like back when in my 20s, like, odd job stuff. And I know that there is a room there or like an observatory room that you can get into. It's got a big telescope in it. At
Yep.
least that's what they told me. Yeah. I've never actually like explored the place or anything. I heard it recently sold.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna ask, oh yeah, and you had mentioned seeing a man walking up the street. Do you remember anything about that guy? Or you just
He was a
remember?
weird dude. That's all I remember. He was a weird dude because
Yeah.
we ran up to him and we were like, did you see? And he's like, did I see? And we're like, did you see the light in the sky? And then we realized as soon as we said that, we were like, oh shit, what did we just open? And he was like, probably a shooting star, saw 120 years ago, lit the whole sky up blue. That's where, and he kept walking as he was saying it. We were like, okay, gotta go. Like,
Right,
he was a
right,
weird dude.
right.
I mean, it's Springfield, middle of the night, and that's kind of
Yeah.
what you're asking for.
I was just wondering, sometimes people talk about like Men in Black and things like this, but it could have just been
No,
a
I think this was,
Springfielder.
yeah, I think it was just a strange guy.
Yeah, that's a super, super, super weird encounter. Something definitely happened to you.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely. The strange thing is over the years, I've dove into the rabbit hole trying to find another story that I can say it's just like that. Now there are a million of them out there that I can be like, oh, well, it's kind of like that. It was kind of like that, but it was never exactly what
Right.
happened to us,
Now I do have
which
another
is always,
abductee story out of Springfield that someone I didn't hear it from the person who it happened to, but I have on good authority and I totally believe it. And this lady, she ended up going, she had to be, admitted. She ended up dying in the hospital. She lost it, completely lost it. And it
yeah, it
happened,
doesn't surprise me.
she was on her way back from Springfield, going over Pleasant Valley Road into Lower Bartonsville in Rockingham.
Yeah.
And the vet there, the Rockingham vet, he's retired now, but Vinny, he saw.
Yes.
So I won't get into the whole story. I've told it on the show before. But this
That's,
lady, she's
yeah,
driving
that's
her
crazy.
car. She's driving her car down Pleasant Valley Road. She's being chased by something, a UFO. She just happens to pull in. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't want to go home. She's scared. Shitless. Like she's so scared. She doesn't know what to do. She's like, I'm gonna go to the vets. There's people there. So she goes to the vet. Vinny's outside. A couple other people outside, and they literally watch this UFO chase her into the parking lot. She parks her car, gets out, and the UFO hovers over them. They all see this. I talked to every single one except for the lady about this. It hovered over her, over them, and it just flew off. But yeah, this lady, she would eventually claim to be abducted. She got, I don't want to say she got sent away, but she went to like the
Yeah.
Brattleboro Street. And then my aunt had gone to her house when it was for sale, and she was looking through the windows, and there were just pictures, hand-drawn pictures of aliens, different aliens everywhere, all over the floor, all over the walls. She had them like duct taped and tacked to the wall, like this.
Yes. So
It's a
thank you.
crazy
Thank you for
story.
reaffirming why. Thank you for reaffirming why I don't want to be hypnotized and remember anything. I don't.
Yeah, so I
Brattleboro
mean, it's
Street's not
definitely
for me.
not the first story, like alien abducted story that I've heard from the area. And I mean, maybe you weren't abducted, maybe it was something else, but I mean, it definitely sounds you got everything, missing time, uh, no memories, mysterious lights, you're kind of hitting all the nails.
Yeah, I wish that there was a way to convey the feeling, like the zapping feeling, the feeling of like, I don't know, I can't explain it. Like there, like when it was behind before the light even closed in, it was like you knew. I I don't know. It was like every instinct in my body
Right,
was firing. Everything was like, you need to get out, get out, get out, get out, and there was no way. And then there was like a sadness of like, I can't. I remember specifically feeling sad, like,
right.
here it goes, like there's nothing I can do. And I didn't know what it was, so I had no idea. It was, but at that point, when it was happening, there was no what's going on, what is this? There was no trying to figure out what it was. It was just like, I don't care what you are, just get away from me.
Mm. Yeah, I think
It,
you describing your friend just staring in tears, like so afraid, is you know gives me
both of them, but the color was like reflecting in their eyeballs. Like that's where I first saw the color, was in eyeballs. And then it was like reflecting on their skin, and it was like you could see the color was there, and the two of them both were just staring straight ahead at this thing behind me, and I didn't want to turn around, but there was no, they couldn't even move to look at anything, and the tears just streaming down her face. The way that they streamed down, they came out of her with her wide open eyes. They just came out like she wasn't, I don't know, like I don't know how to, her eyes were wide open and the tears were just falling out of her eyes.
Yeah, it's
Like there
definitely
was nothing,
something you'd see in a
couldn't
movie
even blink.
about this.
27 years, and in that time, the story's going to change.
Yeah, and my husband just said he's known me for 27 years and the story's never changed. Yeah. Yeah, I don't.
I definitely believe you. And it's just very strange that location being like it is on the outskirts of town, but it's still like in town. And I really
yeah, it's right in the middle of town, really.
being so
I mean, it's right
close to
above the
Hartness
middle.
house has something to do with
Yeah.
it.
I honestly, I always wondered that for me. That's something that always has come to my head. It's like, I wonder if those two places were connected. Like when I say I dove down the rabbit hole, I looked into that, hoping that maybe that guy had like a UFO thing, but I didn't see anything like that.
Right. I mean, he must have. He had to.
Maybe somehow he was calling in UFOs. I don't know.
Right, right.
But like I said, this has been like 97. So, I mean, I don't know.
I know a guy
I don't.
who's he's in, he's part of Stellafane. He's one of the members. And I talk to him every now and then. I'll ask him if I think his name was John Hartness. I forget his first name, but I'm gonna ask him if there's any stories of UFOs.
Yeah,
See what he says.
please. Yeah, and if you hear back, you let me know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a crazy story. It's an awesome story. It really is.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like for a long time, I was like, "Oh, I gotta figure this out," And now it's like
Oh, I
I've come
bet.
to the realization I'm never gonna know. I'm never
Right.
gonna know. I just
Yeah,
hope it never happens again.
right.
That's for sure. I don't want to know bad enough to where I'd ask for it to happen again with an answer. Nope.
Right,
I'm
right.
all set.
Yeah,
Oh.
you might not want to go that route.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If you do,
It
though,
didn't seem.
you might want to
I'll
try.
let you know.
You might want to try like a psychic or something before you go full hypnosis.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually just throughout this show, I've had contact with a psychic, and she's good. I'm like, I was something I didn't necessarily believe in, but she's good. I've had my mind blown
Yeah.
just contacting her about random things, and she'll be like, "Oh yeah, this," and then I'll ask the people, and like, "Yeah, it's right there," and I'll be like, "How would she have known this before I knew this?"
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, I'd definitely be down to get her contact info.
but yeah, thanks for coming on real quick and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for listening. Now I'm
Definitely.
going to be looking up for a minute.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Well, thank you. And if you hear anything similar to me, please let me know.
Yeah, I
So I
will.
don't feel crazy forever.
I'll definitely reach out to a couple people and see if I can get any info.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Definitely.
Talk to you
Yeah.
soon.
Thank you. All right. What do you think about that? UFO alien abduction in the middle of town. Okay. Not necessarily the middle of town, but this area she's describing is literally in town. It's on the outskirts of town, the woods that extend, into the rural areas of Springfield are just beyond the graveyard. But, where she's talking about this this area with the park, the cemetery, the Hartness house. This is in town. There's apartment buildings, several apartment buildings, a couple streets with, residential houses. The Hartness house, like I said, and the Hartness house, we didn't really, I went over it real quick. I believe his name was John Hartness. He was a governor of Vermont, I believe, in the early 1900s. And he has this huge mansion in Springfield, Vermont. It's an Airbnb bed and breakfast inn right now. But yeah, he's got tunnels underneath his house, and I've got videos of those tunnels. I've been there. I even think I've snapped a picture of Mr. Hartness in his tux, in these tunnels. But yeah, he's got tunnels underneath his house. He had this club, they were all into astrology and different astronomical events. I don't know, but he started this whole club. They call it Stellafane. This big telescope, and this Stellafane telescope, it's not on his property. It's actually on the side of the mountain, Mount Ephraim. It's where I had my Sasquatch encounter. On the backside of Mount Ephraim is where this other lady who went to the veterinary clinic that I had mentioned when I was just talking to her, where she said she was abducted. So Mount Ephraim is definitely seems to be a hot spot of weird things. And this Stellafane, this club, this astronomy club, is that the word astronomy? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's astronomy. So this astronomy club, it's on the backside, the opposite side of Mount Ephraim. It's still on Mount Ephraim, which I've also been told by the big man himself, Joe Citro, that Mount Ephraim was considered some sort of UFO alien base of some kind. I don't know where he got this information from, but if Joseph Citro is talking about it, then you can be damn sure that he's at least talked to several people who can back this up. Kind of lost where I was, but yeah, this okay. His name's not John, it's James Hartness. So this James Hartness, like I said, he has got this mansion right next to where our guest, literally probably 100 yards, maybe 150, 200 yards from where our guest had this encounter. Now, James Hartness, he very well could have been into some weird spiritualist / astrological. I don't know. I'm just throwing words together. This guy could have been into some weird stuff. He definitely was into astronomy. And I have no doubt, given the time period that he was around, I believe he moved to Springfield itself in the late 1800s, like 1890 or something like that. He was, so this is right around this whole, the spiritualist movement is in full bloom, and astrology is just taking off. It's just starting around this time period, right? I believe. So I have no doubt that this man was doing some weird stuff in his basement. And like I said, he's got these underground tunnels. And when I went on a tour, they were like, no women were allowed down here. It was only men. James Hartness and his buddies, his club, they were the only ones allowed down there. Nobody really knew what was going on. There's rumors that there's tunnels leading from the basement of the Hartness house to the bank at the bottom of the hill. Like, there's these mysterious tunnels that are said to be going who knows where. I've heard of one going from the basement of his mansion to the bank. There very well could be one going from the basement to the graveyard cemetery, which is not far. It'd be easier to make a tunnel to go to the cemetery than it would the bank. So I don't know. He could have been doing anything, and I have no doubt that our guest's encounter with this UFO has something to do with James Hartness, the Hartness house, the weird astrological sciences that they were doing. I don't know. I mean, I'm not one for words. However, I have no doubt that he was messing around with some pretty crazy stuff. But yeah, that is an intense, frightening encounter. And it blows my mind, the fact that something like that could happen to you in the middle of town. She did mention it was very late at night. So I don't necessarily think we have anything to worry about walking from the grocery store to our car. I highly doubt any of us will be abducted in the Walmart parking lot. However, late at night, you're the only one around. You might want to look to the sky after hearing this one. All right, on to our second tale. And this is a Sasquatch encounter someone had while fishing one day in the same area of our first story, same town, not necessarily the same area, definitely several miles apart. However, this was still on the outskirts of the town of Springfield, kind of closer to Weathersfield, Vermont. Let's check it out. This guy, he sent in his story, and I read it out for him. I didn't change really anything he said. I might have changed a word here or there, but this is his encounter, and it is also a very interesting Sasquatch story, and I definitely think you all enjoy it. So let's get into our second tale of the evening. Hello, this will be the first time sharing my story with anyone other than my significant other. I'm one of the lucky/unlucky few to have had a sighting. It was the summer of 1996, sometime in late July. I love to fish, and I was dropped off at a pond I knew of and planned to get picked up about 8 p.m. just before dark. The pond sits right against the dirt road outside my old hometown of Springfield, Vermont. Fishing was uneventful, and the mosquitoes were being a severe pain in the butt just as sundown came, so much so I was starting to wish my ride would arrive early, which is not like me. Eventually, dark fell and my ride was late, so I decided to start walking down the dirt road towards the direction they would be coming from. As I got near the end of the pond, to my left in the woods, I could hear what sounded like splashing or wading in water, and at that point, I did not know there was even water on that side of the road. Being older now, I realize it was where the water from the pond released from, and it must have made a swampy area in that spot. I couldn't see through the trees to see what was making the noise, even though it was a well-lit night, and whatever it was getting closer. I decided to squat down under the head-height limbs and look around. What I saw next would forever change me, and I'm getting goosebumps as I write this now. There were 2 Bigfoot standing there, and at the time, I don't even think I knew what I was looking at. My first thought was that someone was messing with me, but I was alone in the dark, sort of in the middle of nowhere land, and there were no cars around. What was likely only seconds seemed to last forever. Through the moonlit trees were 2 giant, hair-covered creatures, one about a foot taller than the other. The bigger one was about 8 to 9 feet tall, and the other was about 7.5 to 8 feet. This is my best guess, as my dad is around 6'3", and they were significantly bigger than he was. I could see their grayish, silver-colored hair hanging off their forelimbs as they trudged slowly through the backwater of the outlet, coming closer to me. Their heads were down, and looking back now, I believe they may have been looking for frogs. I was known as a scrapper in my day and can handle business if need be, but there were 2 of them, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't losing my mind. Either my friends were about to get their butts kicked, or there were 2 giant, hair-covered creatures heading my way. So out of nowhere, I let out a short, "Hey!" as loud as I could. The 2 creatures stopped dead, and at the same time snapped their heads up towards me, and their eyes glowed a darkish red color. What happened next scared me beyond belief, and left no shadow of a doubt that it was no bear or person or any known animal to modern science. The best way I can explain it is by saying it sounded like the roar of a lion, but with an elephant trumpet sound that I felt in my body as much as I heard with my ears. It stunned and shook me for a second, but I ran down that road as fast as I could and never looked back. I never could really bring myself to talk about that moment, not from fear of being laughed at, but from the frustration of people saying that I was full of it or that I was lying. Well, it's not 1996 anymore, and times have changed. I'm not just a believer in Bigfoot, I know they exist. What's sort of cool now is that I can Google Earth the area, because at the time I couldn't be bothered with trying to figure out what they were doing or why they were there. But funnily enough, it's near water, a huge field parallels those woods, and I have seen countless deer crossing exactly where they were going. And just back in the woods, a couple 100 yards, is a giant power line that nowadays they say is the preferred way of travel. And it makes sense, seeing how it's the path of least resistance. Of course, all that is just speculation. My name is, and those that know me call me, and now you know my sighting, which is more than most anyone else. Thank you for letting me share that memory with you. Do what you will with it, or nothing at all. Take care. You see what I'm talking about? Like, this is, that's also just as crazy, just as incredible. You know, imagine walking down the side of the road after being eaten alive by bugs and seeing this, right? I know when I was talking to him, when he was telling me his story, I couldn't get the thought. I was just like, where did these Sasquatch come from? It's almost like they just appeared out of nowhere. You know, and we did just talk about Sasquatch being able to pass from the spirit world to the natural world at will. Did they come through some sort of portal? Are they natural creatures? Did they just walk out of the woods? I don't know, but maybe our last tale of the evening can help clarify some questions. I don't know. Some people might not like this story. However, I know I found it incredibly intriguing. This is definitely something I haven't heard much about, and it's definitely something you do not want to wake up to in the middle of the night. Now let's get to our last story of the evening.
I can remember back when I was in the 8th grade. This is 55, 60 years, 50. And there was a teacher there that was really interested in, I mean, he was a geography teacher and stuff, and he had casts back then that were supposedly from Bigfoot and talked about it. I mean, that was
Wow.
a long time ago.
That's pretty cool. Where was that?
Well, it was in Claremont. It was when I was in.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
It was like, I know things didn't really pick up until the Patterson-Gimlin film came out. And then, like, Boggy Creek, have you ever heard of that movie?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Episode. I watch they've got a Bigfoot thing that goes on. I've watched all these things because I've always been interested to find somebody talking about something similar to what my experience was.
Right.
And I've only seen two or three times where somebody, were talking about something and it really sounded like this could be more feasible.
Yeah, definitely. I know from what I heard, yours is definitely unique.
Well, when something gets in and out and doesn't, how it did, I don't know. The doors were locked on. And we were this was up in the Northeast Kingdom, back 1982. And we were up there I had a camp up there on the lake. And we spent the weekend, and I don't know, this happened when I woke up, probably, it must have been about 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30, 4 o'clock. And I was laying, we were sleeping, I was laying on my back in bed. This thing was crouched next to the bed, staring at me.
Right.
And I watched it. I mean, I feel like you were paralyzed. I couldn't do anything. I mean, I weren't alive. Didn't appear to be scared of it
Right.
for some reason. But I watched this thing slowly stand up, all the way up. And I watched his eyes get real big as the expression on his face changed unbelievably. And like, I shouldn't be seeing it. That's the impression I got. You shouldn't be seeing,
Right.
And as I just sort of stared at it, then all of a sudden, it was almost like a flash. I mean, that thing, it was gone. I could see the flash of the thing, and something hit my foot on the bottom of the bed. So something went by me,
Right.
and it was gone. But I mean,
How do you know how tall? Like when it was crouched down, and then it stood. You know how tall it was.
It couldn't have been no 8-footer or anything like that. It probably, I'd say, it could have been over 6 feet, but I don't think it was. It was big,
Right.
and it was black. It looked like it was either dark or black fur, like up to its neck, all the way down. That's what it appeared to be. And the head was sort of leathery or whatever. I mean, it wasn't, but he had pretty good sized eyes and stuff. And when you can see the expression on his face change, and it's weird. But and I immediately, I mean, you'd think, well, maybe you're dreaming, but I immediately turned and bent back and turned the light on in the bedroom immediately. And my wife woke up, and she was there beside me, and she says, "What's going on?" I said, "You don't want to know."
Right.
That was pretty much it. So
So you didn't necessarily see it walk out. It was just like
it was a flash.
That's interesting
I
too.
mean, it was headed that way, but it was it wasn't something that I could watch run out. It was just a flash, and it was gone.
What was the name of the lake?
Shadow Lake.
Let me see. I got somebody else that I was talking to. Let's see. Probably can't find the name of the lake now. But they were up at a camp up there in that area. Concord.
Yeah.
Right? Is it near Concord, Vermont? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it was up there, and I think they were four-wheeling or something. They were out in the woods, and they took a picture of the footprints in the mud, but they weren't very big.
Yeah.
They weren't like giant.
Right.
But everyone was always like I showed them, and people were like, "Oh, those aren't real." But then I heard your story, and it's weird how, seems like there's a lot of activity up there. I heard something about a game warden.
Right. My daughter may have told you about. My cousin was a game warden up there, and somebody came to his house scared, seemed to be scared real, out of his mind, and said that he'd seen something like that in the woods. But I still don't. I mean, they may be in the woods. These things, to me, whatever they aren't some dumb animal throwing rocks.
Right.
They're for as many people that have supposedly seen them, and all of what's going on today. I mean, with everybody having the trail cams, millions of them out there, plus everybody's got a phone in their pocket. I mean, how many real pictures have you ever seen of one?
Right. None.
Right. And like I said, the only instances I seen on TV that come close to what I saw is an individual that said he saw one, pointed a gun at it and shot, and it disappeared. And another one that said he saw one that was crouched down, and another different individual, that the thing stood up and looked at it and it disappeared. So, whatever if these things are something or real or whatever they are, they're way beyond what we think.
Right.
It's a lot different.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I was talking to this. He's a mountaineer. His name's Adam Palmer. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's actually on a couple TV shows. Curse of the Frozen Gold and Dead Man's Curse. I don't know if you ever heard of those, but he's a treasure hunter. Actually, is what he is. And there's a lost gold mine up in British Columbia, right? And he's been looking for it, but he's into this kind of stuff, and he says how like the Native American tribes up there, the First Nations people, tell stories of how they can, these Bigfoot creatures, they can walk in the spirit world and the natural world, and they can just go back and forth at will.
This is, what they're saying. I mean, they talk about aliens or whatever, but I mean, they don't know what's around or and if it's, there's something a lot different than what people think they are.
Right.
You know, I don't, no doubt people are seeing things, but to be able to get them for, you know, on cameras and stuff, I mean, it's hard to believe as long as people have been seeing different things that we haven't got a lot more, you know, pictures and stuff of something. But
is that the only encounter you've ever had?
that's the only one like that, right? I've spent a lot of time up in the woods up there. I roamed all over the place. As I metal detect and I roam through the woods, and you know, I spend a lot of time around. Oh, so no, so yeah, that's the only incident I've had. We had another incident up there in a, like it's talking about aliens or whatever, but I mean we were on the lake up there one time. This was before that. It was probably a couple of years before that, and there was a clear globe we watched in the sky going over. Just something that floated over the lake while we were out in the thing. Yeah, that was the only other weird thing I've ever seen up there.
What year was that?
It was had to be around the same time, in the same, within a year or so of that. But yeah, I mean, that they claim a lot of this stuff, UFO stuff, is seen around power dams and stuff. Now you got the big dam up there, that Monroe Dam. That's a big, huge power dam up there. Whether that has anything to do with anything that goes on in the area, I couldn't tell you, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you hear about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nuclear power and electricity and.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, I wished I had more to say, but I mean that, you know, was an awful weird experience.
Right,
and
definitely.
there was something there.
Yeah.
I wasn't imagining something. I mean, this thing was as clear as, and like I say, it was closer than you are to me when it was standing there, just crouched down, just looking at me.
So it'd probably been watching you for a little while, you think?
Yeah, I'm sure it had been there for a little while anyway. I mean, it got in and, you know.
There wasn't any footprints in the house or anything?
There was nothing.
Really?
Nothing. That's why I say, I went out after, I mean, the next morning after I got up and that thing calmed down, I looked around the place to see if anything, but.
You didn't hear any doors close? Or...
No, and the way no, it was locked.
Right.
The place was locked. That's why I say that whatever these are, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard, I believe you, but I've never heard a story like that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, I've heard a couple, maybe somewhere else, but nothing anyone's ever told me.
Yeah. Well, that thing was as real as could be standing there, and it was solid. And I mean, it, you know, when you can see the expression on his face change, that's what got me. I mean, his eyes just sort of lit up, and it just, you shouldn't be seeing me. And I didn't after a while.
Yeah.
Pretty much it.
All right. I mean, that's really all I want. Just wanted to hear the story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wished I could prove more of it somehow, but there's no way to.
Yeah, no.
You either believe it or you don't.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the problem with most of them. I mean, I definitely believe. I've never seen one or anything, but I did have something weird happen to me on Mount Ephraim, over in Rockingham way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I didn't see anything, but I was hunting and something was sounding like a turkey. And I kept hearing it, but it kept changing, and then it started growling. Someone started growling, and then there was like these tree knocks from somewhere. And I was just like, I gotta get out of here. But I never saw anything, so I don't know.
I don't think in my opinion, I mean, this thing could, if it wanted to hurt me, it certainly could have just done whatever it wanted to. So I think they're more curious than they are anything else, or whatever they are. But I don't think they're dangerous. I just don't. I find it hard to believe, listening to a lot of the stuff on TV, how they, I mean, have all these territories, and if you go in, they want, go after you. But that's
right. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. It definitely could have hurt you if it wanted to.
Oh, it could have destroyed me pretty easy. I mean, when it, but because it was big. I mean, it weren't no little thing. It was but it weren't 8 feet tall, but it probably,
Right.
but it was,
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting story. It's nothing I've ever heard before.
no, I'm sure. Well, that wasn't impressed the guy down there when I told it down to the
Right.
site there. He seemed to try to, now they gotta be, he's been places where they've thrown rocks at him and stuff. I don't know about that. I mean,
Yeah, it's definitely.
why would they? Why? And another reason is something that's 8 or 9 feet tall. Every time somebody sees it, it takes off. If it's that big and powerful, why is it running from people?
Right.
I mean, that don't make any sense. Other than it doesn't want to be seen and it doesn't want anything to do with anybody.
Right. I mean, my personal belief, and like I said, I haven't seen anything, but I'm more towards what you believe, and that they can just move in between these realities.
But there's got to be
Who
a
knows?
lot more to it than what people are thinking. And like I say, they supposedly been around forever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I look.
listen to Indians and
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. When I hear these stories from them, from however long they've been around for hundreds, thousands of years, there's got to be something behind it, But yeah. All right, I think that's good.
All right.
See what I mean? These stories, they're mind blowing. Imagine, just try to imagine waking up. You're at your summer camp. You've been boating, fishing, just having a good old time. And you go to bed, and you wake up, and you see a Sasquatch squatted down, looking at you, watching you sleep. And then when it sees that you see it, it's gone in a flash. Whoosh. I can't remember if it's 100% clarified, but it did not run out of the room. It flew. I almost want to describe it as flying. It flew out of the room. He said if it did run, it ran so fast. It was just like a streak of lightning. Whoosh, right out of the room. Doors locked from the inside. How did it get out? I don't know. I'm speechless. I don't even know. There's got to be some sort of portal involved in this. And I know he was. I remember going to the same event in my town as he did over the summer, where Mike from In the Shadow of Big Red Eye was holding an event, and I believe that he shared his encounter with Mike, and Mike didn't believe him. And I know that this upset, he was honestly upset that Mike didn't believe him. And I truly believe that this man honestly saw what he saw. He knows he saw what he saw. There was no doubt in his mind he saw what he saw, and I believe him. So yeah, let's wrap this puppy up. We'll get out of here right after the break. All right, guys. I honestly hope you had enjoyed tonight's episode. These were great, 3 great encounters from the Green Mountain State, the great state of Vermont. We often don't hear a lot of paranormal stories unless they're dealing with ghosts when it comes to Vermont. I feel like Vermont, being the small state that we are, we're often left out. There's definitely more cows than people in the state of Vermont. And I mean that in the best of ways. You know, I love Vermont. I love my home state. My wife's often trying to get me to move out of here, but honestly, I don't think I ever could. So yeah, those are 3 great paranormal encounters from the Green Mountain State, the state of Vermont. And if you have an encounter that's like one of these that you have heard, or similar in any way, if it's, you know, like I said in the beginning, if you have any sort of encounter with the paranormal, please reach out, share your story. It doesn't necessarily have to take place in Vermont. You know, we are a nationwide, a worldwide show. But seeing how Vermont is my home state, you know, we're produced out of a small town here in Vermont. You know, I always love hearing stories from Vermont or New England. You know, I try to cover New England as often as I can. There's just something about, you know, our little corner of the world that just feels like home. And I guess that's probably because it is home, right? So, like I said, if you have encountered the paranormal and you want to share your story, reach out. Don't hesitate. No judgment here. And that definitely sounds almost canon to me.